Hello, this is Smartball, and this is Super Mario Advance 2, Super Mario World for the Game Boy Advance. This is the No Star World category of the game. It's basically the warpless version of the game. This is a replay of my Twitch VOD, so bear with the quality issue. Sorry for the the play tracker there. Anyways, so Super Mario Advance 2, it's basically a remake of Super Mario World for the Game Boy Advance. It's a game that hasn't got as much attention as its counterpart, although it's just a remake of Super Mario World, but it hasn't gotten as much attention. There are fewer glitches in this version. There are a couple I'm actually working on, but they're not relevant in this category. Well, actually, one of them is kind of relevant in this category and could save some seconds, but that's far off and not very consistent, so not really viable for a marathon, because typically it ends up in death if you fail it. Anyways, I digress. Now this category in particular has been one I have worked on very hard to optimize. And while the run's not perfectly optimal yet, it's pretty close. It's within 5 to 10 seconds of essentially a perfect run for someone of my skill level. It actually finally surpassed the, despite having fewer glitches that save time. There are glitches that save time in the SNES version of this game that we cannot use in this, particularly Forest of Illusion clip and Sandbar clip in Valley of Bowser 2. Despite skipping those, this is still the faster version of the game. I think some of that is just slightly faster overworld movement, and then a bit less lag, especially during some of the fanfares after levels. So I actually beat the No Star World world record for the SNES by, I want to say, about 2 seconds. So it's very, very close. The world record holder for that category in the SNES version has agreed to try and submit a race of this between him and I. Hopefully he goes through with that. It would be Green Death Flavor. Very, very unbelievably talented runner of this game. He would be playing on the Super Mario World version of this game, and I would be playing on Super Mario Advance 2. And we can compare the two games side by side, essentially. He is, admittedly, much more skilled than I. However, my game is just slightly quicker, and relies on a few less glitches. It sort of evens the playing field out. I would say our estimated average times could be pretty even with each other given some practice. He does rely on a couple of clips, such as Forest of Illusion 2, where he has the ability to save several seconds on me. However, with the load times, I should be keeping pace quite handily. It actually might be pretty tough. I think he would probably win. He'd probably beat me despite having the technically slower game. There are also a few strats that he can incorporate into his run. I'm not sure if he has Forest of Illusion 1 Wings in his record for No Star World. I'm not sure if that was a mainstream trick back when he got that record. So we're just chugging along here on Donut Secret 1. The route of the levels is identical. There are no detours you take in either version that, you know, are any different. I guess this ghost house is slightly different because my boot pattern here is a little random there, but it's never a problem. At least unless you're going for 96 exits, which for some reason I had a mental lapse and thought I was. That's why I mentioned it at all. The next level definitely does have a small difference, whereas GDF would be able to take right off here by using these rotating platforms. I have to turn back. It's another small instance where I lose some time on him. Flight speeds, all that stuff works exactly the same in this version as it does in the SNES counterpart. So I have to check the screen for my flight speed. It's very, very subtle, very difficult to kind of master the art of finding the proper flight speed and recognizing that you have the proper flight speed. Else, I mean, anyone could get the proper flight speed, but actually recognizing that you have it and keeping it is a whole different story. I remember kind of messing up there once. There were a few mistakes in my run here. Most of them very small, such as that. Like that cost me less than a second because I kept moving right. Most mistakes in this don't lose all that much time. There are a few mistakes you can make that'll end up losing you some time, but yeah. Morton's Castle is surprisingly quite similar to the Super Nintendo version. I say surprisingly because a lot of the maps in this game, including this one, have been shrunken down a little bit in order to fit on the Game Boy Advance resolution and on their screen, or on its screen rather. However, the strat remains the same. You bring the springboard up and throw it in the hole and bounce on up. 2 fireballs and a stomp kills Morton, as well as Roy and Ludwig. And on to World 3. World 3, this is a world, it's not terribly difficult. However, there are a couple tricks in here that are notorious for giving me trouble occasionally. It's a hot or cold streak, really. But when I'm well practiced, World 3 is not an issue. There actually is one area that's a little different than the SNES version, and that'll be in the next level, Vanilla Secret 1, not in this one. This level right here is very similar. There's a timing I have to line this up perfectly. I always throw the shell at that block to spawn the vine in case I don't make it up all the way. It's just like a little safety net. And then afterwards I could climb up the vine to get up to the key. This level's a little different here, whereas right here I actually go to the right and do a little duck under that Koopa in order to get up here a lot faster. A lot, as in like maybe a second faster. Otherwise I would have to take another flight, and I don't make it all the way up to the top in the same amount of flights. It's an easier strat for me, and it also saves a very small amount of time done optimally. On to a couple of... This is more of the relaxing area of the game. Definitely some donation reading can be done here. Just a couple of flyover levels, followed by a water fort, followed by a long auto-scroller, followed by a flyover level. Whereas the only real area of note in that is the boss fight of the water fort. The boss fight for this is a little different, or at least the strategy of it is a little different. There is a way to do it faster, but you will certainly lose your cape and typically die trying to do it. So I do it a somewhat safer way. There is still a good chance you lose your cape depending on the pattern. However, this fort here, it's not really a big risk to lose your cape. In the following auto-scroller, there is a cape that you'll get right after. So those are the two flyovers in which you, the only real note of skill there is just learning how to recognize flight speeds, which is identical to SNES Super Mario World. Here is the water fort. We're just gonna keep swimming right, get to the pipe, and then keep swimming right some more. Nothing too much a note in here. Nothing really different than the SNES version. But I do think it would be fun to showcase the differences between these two runs and how close they actually are to one another, yet having completely different strats in some levels. Just do a little slight pause. That was actually a little too much of a pause, but not, nothing too detrimental. Okay, so now we're going to Reznor. And the key to this Reznor fight is hitting that second one as late as possible. That way you can quickly get that fourth hit off and end the fight earlier. If you don't do that, you have to wait like a quarter turn or so for the Reznor to actually get up to an area in which you can hit it and land on the platform underneath it. So that just saves a little bit of time. You often lose your cape doing that, but it's not really a huge risk. Butter Bridge 1. This is probably the easiest level to goof off in and do silly things because you're just, I don't know, dying to go faster than you currently can go. In one way, it's a great mental break. Oh my goodness, I almost died there because I wasn't paying attention. In one way, it's a good mental break, but you can't take too much of a mental break or you're going to just kill yourself. There is actually a very dangerous part right here, especially if you don't have your cape. You need to raise that platform in the middle set of the two mushroom platforms that raise and lower one another. You have to raise up the right one on the second set of them, or else you're not going to be able to make it to the third one. In the vanilla SMW, the original SMW, you do not have to do that. It's very trivial. If you have a cape, you technically don't have to either in this version. However, we just got our cape back because we lost it to Reznor. And you also don't want to rely on your cape there because it's quite scary. You kind of fall off the screen still and just bounce off of one of those Koopas. It keeps you afloat for long enough. You can see me trying to rack up some points here for no reason. And now on to Butter Bridge 2, another flyover. But this is kind of the end of the relaxing part of the run. After this, it ramps up with Ludwig's Castle, which is no joke. A lot of the strats for Ludwig's Castle have transferred over pretty nicely. That honestly, when I took the time to route this game a little more optimally, a lot of strats in this game were thought to be impossible in this version due to the smaller play area. Obviously, flyovers are basically no different, but levels like Roy's Castle. Well, let's get to Roy's Castle when we get there, because it's actually very scary in this version. So we're going through Ludwig's Castle now, not to be distracted by Roy's upcoming. This castle is translated very well. Nice flight through the second room here, and we will go right in the door here. Very scary flight if you don't know how to do it. Oh my goodness, that door was awful. We're going to deploy our fire flower at the bottom because we do not want to lose our cape here, and we also it's a little quicker to deploy it at the bottom. But just like most other bosses, 2 fireballs and a stomp, and you are done. And at this point, I got incredibly nervous in this run because I realized how far ahead I am. On to Roy's. The first level in Forest of Illusion is a little different here. In the SNES version, if you're talented enough, which the top runners are, very much are, you will go for Forest of Illusion 1 Wings, which will save some time on this version of the game. However, it's very difficult, very risky. I mean, you don't lose too much time if you miss it, typically, but as long as you don't, lose Yoshi or anything. But I can't imagine how you would. The normal strat in this version is a little different than the other one, though. We're going to do a full spin fly from the start because these note blocks that I'm currently under, they're very difficult to go over unless you're taking off right in front of them. So what we do is that full spin fly from the start puts me right underneath them, and then I could fly to the end of the level safely. Now, one of the bigger differences of this run compared to the SNES version is this next level here. In the next level, you currently have a Yoshi in the SNES version. You get it from Forest of Illusion 1 there. And you'll clip through this wall here. While it is technically possible to do in this version of the game, it's just not something that's within human control. In a task of this, yes, they would be able to do it quite easily, but it's based on, I believe, subpixels and momentum value. I don't know. It's beyond my grasp of knowledge of this game, for sure. But it would be called a clean clip, and you would just be able to clip right through the wall. However, SNES, you don't need that. You can dismount and remount Yoshi and get right in that wall. In this version, unfortunately, you cannot. However, I do use a nice set of damage boosting and screen scrolls in order to get through the level slightly faster than I normally would without. Here's an area where this version of the game kind of benefits from less lag too. All those Rip Von Fish, they just kind of bog down the SNES version. The SNES version keeps them off screen, but if it were to do it without the Yoshi clip, it would be very laggy there. And now on to the final regular level of Forest of Illusion, which is very similar to that of the SNES counterpart. You just fly over the level and enter the pipe towards the end. Key in the hole and on to the next level. Whew, a lot of talking. Anyways, here we are towards the end, and now we'll go on to Roy's Castle. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times already that the playing field is smaller in this version, and that comes very much into play here. This is probably the second scariest room for me in the game, because I have to manage this flight. Oh my god. I'm scared doing it even when I'm not actually doing it, and I know I get it in this video. You have to be at the perfect spot in order to get that. You can tell how nervous I deployed my power-up twice because I was just so nervous. I was literally shaking doing this run. And that flight there, it's just, you don't have much vertical real estate there to properly swoop down beneath those flying potobos. And in this version of the game, that level is very difficult. Yeah, I have begun to master it. Well, I did begin to master it when I was running this category, and then I later adopted it in '96 as well. So we're gonna go on to Chocolate Island. Small difference between this game and the SNES game for Chocolate Island 1 anyways is pipe flies, door flies, all that stuff where you can maintain flight through a door, unfortunately does not work in this game. So there's a trick called cannon fly that we unfortunately have to skip. It saves a second or so in SNES, but it's not a huge deal. I often miss it in the SNES version anyways. It's quite difficult for someone who's not very good at the game. So we're gonna end up grabbing this springboard towards the end of the level just for a backup cape. There's no harm in grabbing this cape here. You waste very little time doing it, and it makes the rest of the run so much safer. This is actually a level that has become much safer in this version than in the SNES version, namely because of this guy right here coming up right there. Fishing Boo. In the SNES, he follows you straight through the level. He's screen locked to you, where in this version he has his own separate speed and momentum, and you just fly right on by him. And also this Boo line there is going in the opposite direction, making it very easy to fly on up there. No need to cape cancel or bounce off of it. Very clean, very easy, very safe. Okay, on to Chocolate Island 2. Another small difference here is because of the smaller real estate in the second room here, I'm gonna have to do a small turnaround in order to gain flight. That's one of the areas where, for my reasoning of doing this voiceover, by the way, I kind of said a bad word over there as I failed to get in that small hole where that big dinosaur was. I was startled and I may or may not have said a bad word. So we're going to go in a keyhole there and head on over to the worst level in the game, in my opinion. It's not the hardest. There really is only one difficult part of this level here. Otherwise, all the speed strats, including this strat by Steven1704, they translate perfectly. There's only one part in the third room that doesn't translate well, and again, that's because the map is just slightly smaller. There's no room for takeoff, so we actually just kind of have to do a little back and forth at the start. Normally, in the SNES, you can just kind of run right up, bounce off of these spike tops here, and gain flight up here. But the level layout's a little bit different, and it prevents you from doing so. So you have to do a little bit of a back and forth. I actually messed that up and lost a few seconds there. Okay, flying over this last area of the level. This is a very hard area. Just a very hard area of the run, just because if you mess up or lose your cape, you have to just stay calm and keep on going. But on to Wendy's Castle. I said Roy's Castle was the second hardest room in the game. The second room of this level, in my opinion, is one of the hardest rooms. And I actually, if I recall correctly, perform it quite well here. So we're going to cape cancel through that. It's a luck draw on whether or not you get through there. However, it's not really important whether you get it or not, because Big Mario right here is just as fast and gets right through the door in the same amount of time, essentially. And a nice little advantage to this game is being able to deploy your cape whenever you want. I strategically deploy my cape there in order to just squeeze under there to skip that cycle. That cycle is so hard to skip in this game. that pillar that drops down in layer 2 is a lot bigger in this game because they stuffed a dragon coin into it. And it just makes it very difficult to go underneath. That was the fastest iteration. I have 3 different iterations of going under that platform, and that is the fastest one. I can't believe I nailed it in this run while so nervous. I can't believe I even went for it, because there's a very safe version of it, too, where I get it every time, essentially, and this is an RTA, though. It's not a marathon, so I just went for it. Marathon version of this run takes the safe route. I promise. I would be much too nervous to try anything unsafe there. Now we're going on to the sunken ghost ship. Nice little water level, nice little break, so to speak. We're gonna grab a backup cape here, though, since we had lost it in Wendy's, which, again, not a big deal. We lose that cape more often than not, but my strats for that level are kind of revolving around that. I don't think that's a word. The boo cloud here is slightly different. It works a little differently. Where these boos are vertically vary based upon your vertical height of the screen. So sometimes if you don't adjust your height in the screen well, you often can't get through there as quickly. And that is a very scary... I mentioned in my 11 exit video that these boo rings have very bulky hitboxes. It's very difficult to go through those. And that's probably something I would be... Unless I have a backup cape as I do right now, that's something I'm going to be cutting out of the marathon run, is trying to go through that boo ring. I actually remember this run now. I accidentally deployed my cape right here instead of spinning it. I was... I felt so foolish. But really, it's as if... We'll just pretend as if I had lost it in that boo ring, because I often do. So if I have a backup cape, I won't hesitate to try and go through the boo ring to show off. But if I do not have the backup cape, I'm keeping my cape, because cape is very valuable in this level, as you'll see now. And it's very easy to lose. Those 3 gophers right there are pretty, or moles rather, are very easy to lose your cape to. But the rest of them, not so much. They're very difficult to lose your cape to. Because most of them you're just cape canceling through and killing while you're invulnerable. And we're going to get a backup cape back here anyways. Another level I did a lot of work on in optimizing and adapting to the SNES strat is the next level. The first room here is darn near impossible to do like the SNES version. You have to fly a lot lower in this version, or else these swoopers here, these bats, they're going to get you every time if you stay up off the screen. You have to stay very low here, but still above the Koopas. Another strat I'm working on, but I haven't made too much progress in, is the sandbar clip. This is a strat that SNES has on this game currently, where the SNES will save a bunch of time if they can nail the strat. However, I am trying to adapt it to this version. It was previously thought to not be possible to perform sandbar clip in this. I have found a way to do it. However, I have yet to save the cycle yet. I think part of that is just practice, and part of that is just the fact that, again, your playing field here is a lot smaller, especially horizontally. Or rather, vertically. Your playing field's smaller vertically here, so it's more difficult to gain that horizontal distance over a smaller vertical time in which it takes for the sandbar to move up and down. So, on to Valley Fort. Very, very difficult fort. There is a way to get past this first set of crushers without getting hit, but it involves stopping right there. Whereas the SNES version, you could screen scroll right away. However, with less buttons, the screen scroll is a little different in this version, and you have to do it at a different time. The rest of the strats pretty much hold true, though. You could keep flight right through here, bounce off these potobos, and the big crusher skip is right here. And then I just kind of played it safe for the rest of the fort, going through here and not trying to keep P-speed because that's just not worth it. And this is a properly executed Reznor. That's how Reznor is supposed to look without losing your cape. You are kind of dependent upon your on what the third Reznor you kill. When he shoots his fireball is that's what's depending on, or that's what's causing you to lose your cape or not. I have a backup cape here and a very viable strat to deploy that backup cape at a very convenient time for myself. That's the beauty of this game. That's my one favorite technique that this game has over the SNES version. If I had to pick just one, you have control of when you deploy your backup item. Whereas in the SNES version, if you get hit and lose your item, you go back to Small Mario and it automatically deploys your backup item. Where in this version, you just go down to regular Super Mario and you still have your backup cape in inventory or Fire Flower, whatever you have. Cape kill is something that was worked on by mostly Steven1704. I kind of adjusted it a bit to make it more consistent for myself. And hopefully other runners too. I'm not sure if anyone else does cape kill besides me in this game, besides myself and Steven. But cape kill has become a very consistent thing for me in this. I actually kind of nearly choked it in this run. I kind of messed up the cape kill a bit, but I ended up pulling it off. I kind of pulled it out of the dumpster here. So Koopa is actually further to the left than he normally is. I had to throw the Koopa to the left instead of dropping it straight on him. And then I was luckily able to time the Bowser's left-right momentum and the timing of him throwing his items perfectly, in that he threw the Mecha Koopa at the proper spot. So I land on the left Mecha Koopa, and the right Mecha Koopa would walk right out onto me. And now the last phase is rather trivial. I actually delay this a little bit to just make it a lot more consistent. I could wait. I could hit Koopa in midair for that, but it puts Koopa at the very top of the screen there for this hit, and it makes it more difficult. Unnecessarily. You don't need to optimize it that much at this point. But yeah, this is No Star World for the Super Mario Advance 2. I would love to submit this as a race between myself and Green Death Flavor, who would be running the SNES version of it. I feel like it'd be a nice little interesting twist on a race to have technically two different games run side by side, but having it one being a remake of the other, I think would make for some interesting situations and an interesting race. But anyways, thank you for watching. Again, this is Smartball, and I hope you consider this run for AGDQ. Thank you.